And welcome to another Leumi Financial Corner. With us right now is Michael Zaremsky, Head of U.S. Private Banking for Bank Leumi USA, Member Investment Committee for Leumi Investment Services. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you for having me, Zev.
Last week we spoke about Israel as being a startup nation, being a great place for investments. I think it's a good to continue on that. So let's look at Israel again and continuing to see how one can invest in Israel.
Thank you, Zev. Last week we talked a lot about Israel as a startup nation. We talked a lot about the technology, the innovation, and how that was playing out. And I think one of the things that we're seeing now, and what we've seen over the last couple of years, is a transition from Israel as the startup nation into a scale-up nation. And what we mean by that is Israel's economic development keeps continuing. They're moving up the scale in terms of becoming more of a developed economy, more of a developed nation. A lot of the focus that they have right now is how do we have a bigger, deeper, and more developing capital market system. And that's some of the trends that we're really seeing now when we talk about Israel and how that's impacting the way people can invest with them.
I think we've also seen a difference in Israeli governments where beforehand they weren't as involved in making it a more investment-friendly society. Today, I think that's a lot changed. The government has a big hand in helping Israel develop to be a major financial market.
It's an interesting way of phrasing the question, Zev. So you're correct on some fronts, but I'll take a disagreement on some others. I think one of the issues is that the Israeli government has always had a hard hand in the economy, and a lot of what they've done is really encourage kind of national champions. What we're seeing now is the government changing stripes a little bit and being more focused on broadening and deepening out the economy. There's a very strong national priority to ensure corporate success, but I think what we're seeing now is ensuring that corporate success further on down the channel. So it's not just about having a few big, strong national champions in each industry. It's about how do they encourage more capital to come into the country, more people to have public listings in Israel, and really how to make a more successful stock market. And I think what we're really seeing within that concept is a lot more companies coming into the index. So the index is becoming a lot more investable. If we go back historically, the top part of the index was the Tel Aviv 25. In February 2017, it was expanded out to the Tel Aviv 35. And I think more importantly, the bottom part of the index, which was the Tel Aviv 75, is now the Tel Aviv 90. So what you're seeing now is about a 25% increase in the amount of names that are listed on the public exchange that are kind of quoted in the indices. So the Tel Aviv 100 is now the Tel Aviv 125. And what you're seeing in the bottom part of the index, or the smaller cap part of the index, and these are typically companies with a market cap of about $1.2 billion at the top, scaling down from there, in dollar terms, you're seeing a broadening out of public companies. So again, it's not just market leaders, it's companies that are more vested in the economic growth and development of the nation. Within the Tel Aviv 90, which again is the smaller part of the market, about a third of that is real estate companies, about a quarter of it is tech companies, and these are the tech companies that I would say are more dynamic, more high-tech than the tech companies that you'd find in the Tel Aviv 25. You also see a lot more companies that are focused on, again, the domestic growth story. So insurance companies, consumer staples companies, supermarkets, companies that are much more related to or benefiting from the economic growth that you're seeing in Israel.
So if somebody wants to invest in Israel, what's the best path to take as far as maybe with a small cap or a large cap companies?
So this is one of the real challenges with investing in Israel and frankly, investing in all foreign markets. As we talked about last week, everybody thinks that stock market looks like the U.S. stock market, very diverse, very broad, very, very wide. And one of the real challenges, again, is you can make the decision to say, I want to invest in Israel because of technology, and if you simply buy an index that looks like the Tel Aviv 35, you're not really getting the exposure that you think you're getting. One of the ways I like to describe it is you can't just buy the label, you really have to look at the underlying ingredients of the product. So the challenge is Israel is a little bit of a difficult place to invest in for U.S. investors. There's dollar conversion because all the securities are listed in shekels, so you have to buy in shekels. You have to make sure you have the right account. There's a lot of costs associated with it. There's not an index or an ETF that's readily available to capture the lower part of the market. So you have to be very selective, and you need to have expertise in terms of how do you do the discovery to understand what these companies are. Unless you're really in the Israel market, many of the names that represent the Tel Aviv 90 are not household names for U.S. investors. I think most U.S. investors would be fairly familiar with the names in the top 35, but certainly not in the smaller cap part. So I think at the end of the day, you really need expertise, you really need to do your research, and you really need to be careful about how you're engaging with it. We talked last week again about the real estate market in Israel, which is, again, pretty hot. And again, the Tel Aviv 90, I think, better reflects that with about, again, 30% of the index is related to construction and real estate companies, which, again, is something you do not get in the Tel Aviv 35.
I like the fact, don't just check the label, you also got to check the ingredients when you're making any investment.
Absolutely, and I think so many times you see the name of something, it sounds really good, but once you look inside of it, you realize that's not really what I wanted. So I think that's the important part of it, and I think that really is why people have to be careful about how they engage, how they invest. There's several ETFs that are Israel-related, and you just have to make sure that are those really the exposures that I want to get. So again, very careful and very tricky in the foreign markets.
Michael Zaremsky, head of the U.S. Private Banking for Bank Leumi USA, member of Investment Committee for Leumi Investment Services. Thank you for being with us. I encourage people, if you have any questions, you can always call 1-800-892-5430, 800-892-5430, and you can also get information online at LeumiUSA.com. Look forward to speaking with you again next week.
Thank you very much, Dev. Appreciate it. Have a good day.